$15,000 or $25,000 multiplying into $2,600,000. I mean, that's just, I call it 500. Everybody has buyer's remorse. I have it today. I still know I've made great deals. I know I'm buying it right.
$450,000 for 10 units. That just doesn't even sound plausible in this day and age. Hi, I'm Dwayne Lappinga, Director of Asset Management at TR Wealth Management. I have with me today Bill Mulkey, the owner and president of the company. And welcome to our podcast where we will talk about how to build a fortune in California multifamily value-add investing. I know that's a handful, but it does describe the type of investing we do. This conversation could actually apply to lots of different types of real estate investing because it's all about how to get started. And I'm going to be going through with Bill, how did he get started on his journey to being an owner and real estate investor about approximately 20 years ago. It was circa 2000. And thanks for joining me for this, Bill. I'm looking forward to going through kind of your story with you. I think it's a great one. So first of all, you built what I would call small fortune in California multifamily. I guess it's relative to your point of view. You certainly have done very well. So how did you get started on building wealth and particularly buying that very first property circa 2000?
Well, thanks, Dwayne. Really appreciate it. I'll try to just get right into it. The first deal is always the hardest deal, but I did do a small flip of a house. Just to start off, I had an opportunity to get into a property. What I found out was it was like a high pressure because in a house you have no income coming in, you have a mortgage to pay, and you have a short period of time to hit it right. I also had to learn about doing budgets and remodeling it. And I made some money, and it was really exciting because I was very young and I accomplished something, which was great. But after taxes, it wasn't as big as pie as I thought it was.
Yeah.
But I think if I would have started earlier, reflecting back, I probably started at 25 years old, out of college and all that, figuring out loans and figuring out the house situation. I learned how to lay a brick one at a time, and I got better on the fifth or sixth brick, if you get what I'm saying. A do-it-yourselfer. But I think what I learned is after going to work in the real estate field for 10 years, I had some advantages. But what happened is I spent so much time trying to learn and grow up during that period of time. I think if I just would have got started earlier in multifamily where I was practicing and learning, I think I could have got started a lot earlier and better off and maybe made some learning. There's no mistakes, it's just learning. I think I would have done better. But I ended up stumbling onto a deal where I was trying to sell a piece of property. I was a licensed broker. And I met a client to ask him to sell his property. And he said, Bill, I really don't want to sell it. I don't want to list it, actually. I do want to sell it, but I don't want to list it with you. I don't really know you. And I know you have a good firm and all this, but I'm just not comfortable just committing to someone. If you want to buy it for X number of dollars, $500,000. I said, no, that's too high. It's too much money. This is a multifamily property. And it ended up being purchased after many negotiations for only $450,000. And I know that sounds ridiculous. It's only in the year 2000. I guess that seems like a long time ago for a lot of people that are just getting started. But I guess my point of it this today is you can get started, and you can get started with limited amount of money. I put a low down payment on it, Dwayne. I had the seller help me carry back some financing, and the property ended up growing after. My intention was to keep it for 16 years because I flipped my last house. I thought I was going to sell it. But it was in a rent control area. It took a little while to get going, but I realized adding value, hiring an outside manager, I learned from them what to do and not to do legally. And I ended up selling the property for $2,650,000 in 16 years. But that sounds like a long time, but I sold it for 5.6 times more than I bought it for. It's in a rent control area, and everyone says California is tough on rent control. It still appreciates, and it did. I added value to it. I improved it. I invested in it after my purchase. And I think the most exciting thing is during the period of time when I needed money, when sales didn't happen for me in the sales business, I could borrow money on that property. And I took out and refinanced it and put some money in my pocket and put some money in my own house to buy, and also bought other real estate from it. So my very first investment worked out very well for me. And it allowed me to chain reaction to plant other seedlings to go to each and other properties and help me along the way. I was very successful. Maybe by waiting those 10 years, I improved my chances. But I think if I just got started a little bit earlier, it would have been better for me than making commission sales and getting taxed on them. So that's
Well,
just looking back now.
I always tell you that regardless of when you start, one of the main things is ultimately you did get started on investing. You made the decision to get in. And I think a lot of people just never get over that hump because it's a hurdle, it's scary. So you talked about selling it for many times what your initial purchase price. You also took out money several times by refinancing, so it was a source of income during the 16-year hold. But this was purchased in 2000, right?
And also, I forgot to mention that there is cash flow along the way, because in some of the areas, unless you're buying a on the beach property where you're putting 50% down payment and maybe making a little bit of cash flow or none, and just working on banking on appreciation. I was not banking on appreciation, yet I got it through inflation and other factors, principal pay down. But basically, I did get a cash flow. And a lot of my investments today that I have worked on, they bring $1,000 or $2,000 of after tax money. I don't have to go to work and produce that money. It's just cash flow that comes in to my bank account. And that helps me either do further improvements for the property, keep reserves on the property, or, buy other things or buy things for my business that I need.
And how many units was the property?
This is going to sound a miracle to people, but it was actually 10 apartment units.
That's what I wanted to ask you. So $450,000 for 10 units. That just doesn't even sound plausible in this day and age.
Dwayne, some people feel that keeping it forever is the right thing to do, and I cannot argue with it. I see so many wealthy people that buy and keep properties forever. They have a low tax basis, they get good cash flow. Maybe I was young, I get a little bored with it, but I ended up taking the money out of that property and still had over $1 million left over, because in all those refinances, I probably took out about $1 million, maybe 900,000. I had over $1 million to exchange, and I did a tax deferred exchange. So I paid no taxes on it. And I bought an 18 unit building, and that's doing very well too. So sometimes when I tell people I'm selling, they think I'm out of the business. I'm not out of the business. I'm usually moving the money to another vehicle that may be better. This one was closer to my house. I could service it better. I took advantage of some good things that happened in that marketplace. And yes, I did get help by appreciation. I did get help by the area getting better, but that's not the whole answer to the pie. I don't just put it in and hope. I had to work hard at it and
Well,
learn.
it's like a golden goose if you get a good one, right? It keeps laying those golden eggs. And so at the end, why would you want to get out of the business? You either want to keep that golden goose or see if you can get an even better one, right?
We could talk about this later or another things. Not only what you earn, it's what you save. So you want to do a lot of after tax planning too. But let's let everybody worry about it when they have too much money. I'm trying to help the people that don't have a lot of money to can make really something out of it and to get started. That's really what I
Yeah.
like. It's where my passion is.
So let's get back to that because you told a great story. The only thing is, you went all the way to the end with the great success. But what about the person who says, I have very few dollars and I want to get started on this? How did you get into this property? You didn't inherit family money. You didn't happen to have a big, I don't know, extra income from you weren't a doctor or something with a huge amount of money in the bank. What did you do?
That's a good question. Actually, I begged, borrowed, and stole. But no, really, I learned a lot from mortgage banking. I talked to some people. I spent some time in that field, just a little bit. Got a lot of education on that. Found the guy with the goal makes the rules. I learned to communicate with them at least once a week, sometimes several times a week. And they taught me the knowledge on how to borrow and what the bank's looking for, and that the bank is your best partner. And in a way, everyone thinks they're adversarial, but they're the ones lending you the money. In this case, they lend me actually 80% of the money. They don't always do that today. They still can. They get fancy things like mezzanine financing, all these fancy words, but basically they'll give you what the building will cover and what they're allowed to do. And it's usually about 70 to 75% loan to value is max. But back then I showed a local lender that they could give me 80% and get good coverage, debt coverage ratio. For every dollar I bring in of income, it covers the income. And they said, yay, let's let this guy do his thing. So I also had to use the resume for a professional property manager. I happened to know somebody in that area that owned a lot of units. They actually managed that area. So I employed them, paid them to be the manager. And the bank sees that as a more solid basis for an owner that they can manage and handle the problems because they have an experienced property manager. So that helps you on your resume. They ask for an agreement from them to help you out. So that's one way to help yourself buy real estate. The other thing, I guess, would be I did get creative with my family. I didn't use family money, but I did use it for one day. I did put my name on my parents' account where I had my name on it, and it was well seasoned, meaning in the bank for long enough with my name on it, minimum of 60, 90 days or a year or more, if you want to be really conservative. And I just borrowed that money for one day and said, as soon as I close, I'll bring it back. And that's what I did. So I got in with what they call an 80, 10, and 10 program. But anyway, it's knowledge is key, Dwayne. Knowledge is key.
So, how much was the down payment?
$25,000.
And how did you come up with that? Was that money you'd earned in brokerage commissions?
Yeah, they were hard to come by because you've got to go to one sale to another. But yeah, I was managed to save up just enough for 25,000. Actually, you know what? Can I be real honest? I used a credit card for $10,000 of that.
I love that. That's reality. No one would tell you that's good investment advice or the way to go about this, but sometimes in order to get where you want to go, in order to get into an investment that you believe in, you have to do whatever it takes.
I've never confessed that. I'm still like turning red, but I think it just goes to show you that pretty much anyone can do this. I wouldn't recommend it unless they really check it all out. I was educated on it. Like I said, I spent 10 years learning it. That's too long, but I was a young guy. I was less than 25 to 35 years old. I was learning the trade and learning things. I had some advantages. I had some mentors, my uncle, my mom, other people outside, people I've met in the industry, and I learned from everybody. But overall, it was just a wonderful investment. If you just think about 15 or $25,000 multiplying into 2,600,000, that's just there's no return that describes that. But I call it 560% return
In
or
hindsight,
growth.
it seems like a no-brainer to put the 10,000 on the credit card, but I'm sure at the time anybody would have told you were nuts.
Oh yeah, why do you want to pay 10, 12%? Why do I want to kill my dream? I've been waiting for 10 years to do it. This is my only chance. I've got to do it. And it wasn't my only chance, but it was a great opportunity. It wasn't a super discounted, but I just knew what to do with it. And that's not true. I didn't learn. I had to learn as I go. I was young. I know more now. I just can't emphasize more than just to get out there and find people that you can talk to that are in the industry. They're willing to help.
I can't believe that we had to get on a formal podcast for you to disclose that to me after all these years that we've been working together. You never told me about the credit card part.
I guess I wasn't too proud of it, but I am now.
Okay. That reminds me how I got into my first house, which was just a few years before that. And we actually got in a car accident with someone who wanted to settle outside of the insurance, and they gave us, I think, $1,500. That was a vital part of our down payment. To get into that house, I did the same thing. I ultimately had to go to my parents and borrow $500 because I wasn't going to be able to close. I guess that's sometimes how you get into the real estate deal that you really want.
Yeah, you do, unless you're born with money or inheritance or a war chest. Yeah, a lot of people have. I'm sure I've heard a lot of stories that people did well, and I just like this multifamily deal because the house, like I said, was a lot of pressure. I had to perform quickly, and if it wasn't the right timing, or if I overspent money or missed anything, I would have to rent it out, and maybe I would have done really well with that too. But I'm looking for the money to work very hard for us in a short period of time.
So I know another question I want to ask you about that. And a lot of people are probably wondering this. So, if you borrowed some of the money and the rest was, it was probably all the money you had saved, were you really worried at that point when you closed on this property?
It's a while back. I'm sure I was. I know how it turns out, so I'm like, oh, everything's great. Your mind has a way of doing that. But yeah, I was very concerned, but it's funny, the lenders actually help you in the escrow when you buy. You pay your first payment through the closing. So as long as you can get through the closing cost, the rents are in or come in. I had a manager help me with that. All the rents came in on time. Rent control property, they tend to pay more on time. Otherwise, they're asked to leave, and then you get higher rents. But so people tend to pay, and they did. And what happened is I got that extra money in my bank account, and I had $5,000 or $10,000 in my bank account, whatever it was, whatever the income was back then, and it covered the mortgage and the payments, and that's fine. And then eventually, after only like a year or two, I maybe a little bit more than that, I pulled out a refinance and consolidated the loans and got rid of the second trust deed for 400 for $45,000. Remember, it was 450, 10%. The seller carried back $45,000 at some 8 or 9%, maybe 10, I don't know. And I was able to get rid of that and get it at a lower rate because I did well with the property. The income went up 3, 4, 5% a year or whatever it was. And that way I was able to do that. I just wanted to explain that that's how I got out of the maybe the higher leverage position, which is not a good thing to be there in a long period of time.
Tell me that you paid off that credit card.
Oh yeah, that was one of the first things. I didn't pay it off right away because, like
Yeah.
I told you, $5,000. I probably took 3 or 5,000, made a few payments, but I got rid of it within the first 6 months or so. If you look at the rate of return I made, who cares if I paid 14% on the credit card, right? I made 500% at the end of this story. So, just when you take out debt, just have a repayment plan in mind and not just one exit. You got to get several ways that you can take care of it.
It's interesting to me that when I asked you about the fear or the stress of entering into the transaction of placing your money, rather than talking about, oh yeah, I couldn't sleep at night. Oh yeah, I was grinding my teeth. You just said, I got a property manager, I got a lender, we confirmed that the rents would cover the pay. So you were solving for it. And I think that's a really valuable point that, yeah, there's risk. Yeah, it's stressful. But if you look into these deals, there's ways that you can address these risks and have a plan that there's a pretty high chance that you'll be able to make it, right?
People want to live here and people stay in their unit. And in order to stay in the unit, they got to pay their rent. Hopefully, the owner, before you did some due diligence on them, credit checks or whatever, that's not always the case. But overall, people tend to stay and pay because their apartments are more affordable than homes. And that's not always the case, but most of the time it is. And I think the one thing I didn't address is everybody has buyer's remorse. I have it to today. I still know I've made great deals. I know I'm buying it right. I know everything is right about the timing, everything, but I still get buyer's remorse. It's a very normal thing. It's like when you finish a project, you look back on it and you say, wow, I took too long, or here's how I screwed up, or here's how I can do better in self evaluation. So there's a little guilt. Oh, maybe I shouldn't have done that. But I just had such a high desire to do it. And I really, believe it or not, got educated in it, read about it, listen to it. Now you've got these podcasts, other guys that are doing it. They can really, you can listen through and figure out where you want to, audible books, everything they got that you can learn from people like us that have done it and figure out like, oh, I never thought of that. Oh, yeah, that's worth paying for. I didn't pay for the manager for a long period of time. I just did it for probably too long. I probably did 3 or 4 or 5 years. I don't really recall, but I did it long enough to where I said, okay, I think I want to try it myself because I wanted to learn more and make some learning mistakes. But I learned a lot from them and I thanked them for it. And I just felt that I cared a little bit more about it because it was my only asset. So that's what I did, is started managing myself.
So this, I never knew that either. So this was the property that taking ownership of it that got you started in the property management business as well.
Yeah, I didn't have any major disagreements. They weren't ripping me off. No, they were great people. It's just I felt like when I got a vacancy on the property, that was the time to make it shine and to improve the value and step it up and get more income and invest some more in the property. and they weren't putting it on the market until it was already finished and ready. And I wanted to pre-market it to start getting tenants now. And I like tenants knocking down my door that are qualifying, ready to go. And as soon as that paint is dry, they're ready to rent. If you start afterwards, you lost a good 30 days of rent. I still employ that today in the management company that we run, is that I don't like it sitting there. I want to get the best tenant out there. A lot of the best tenants aren't just walking around. They have another, it's like somebody getting a job, right? Somebody has a job, usually has a good job, and they're a good worker. So you've got to hire them away sometimes, like goes with sports teams too, I'm sure. But the thing is, somebody just walking around may not be the best tenant. They may never have rented an apartment before. I get a lot of my tenants do that, but most, I think that they have another place. They like your place. They see it. They have to give notice to the landlord for 30 days. So I don't want to lose 30 days, 30 days, 30 days at $2,000. That's $6,000 that I could either put in my pocket or put into the unit. So that's why I just started doing it, because I cared more. They had more properties to manage and in the same area. So I felt, if push comes to shove, maybe I was competing with them a little bit. But I show people when I manage properties that I don't compete with them, because generally I don't have a lot of properties in the same area that I'm managing for someone else.
So, besides putting the down payment on a credit card, what are some other ways that someone could get started in this? Like, how could they come up with the money to get into a property? Of course, nowadays it's more expensive because it's not 2000 anymore. It's even a bigger mountain to climb. But how could someone get started on that?
There's several ways. I think one of the obvious ways is just get another partner. Get one partner, get several partners. They go group crowdfunding, they have syndications, they have partnerships. There's different words from LLCs of just people gathering. People meet on Facebook and do all kinds of things, whatever they do. I'm just talking about more ownership structure. But yeah, getting someone like my first partner was a painter, and he was very gifted in doing remodeling. And I found out he wasn't just a painter, he could do more. He did maintenance. So that works well with apartments. And I said, hey, why don't you come along with me and I'll show you how to do it? And I could sure use your paintbrush, your crew, your truck, your knowledge, and your Spanish. And he and I probably did a good 20 deals together just by saying, hey, you put in 50% and I'll put in 50%. And at times I felt like I was doing more work than him. And other times he felt like he did more work than me. But we came together at 50-50. And I was finding the properties, buying the properties, negotiating the properties, putting the loans together, figuring out the game plan, the strategy, and what to charge. And he was out there fixing it up and talking to the tenants if need be. So we had a really good team. If it wasn't broke, we don't. If it's not broke, don't fix it. So probably did at least 20 of our first deals together, and then we brought in other people along the side to as we needed more capital. But basically, I grew that from him as well. And to this day, he's my partner, and he's still doing extremely well.
So now he wasn't your partner on this first deal. If I remember correctly, was it the second building you bought that you guys went in together?
Yeah, just something about me, even though it was my first property, I probably could have used the partner. I always try to test things myself. If I feel it works for me and I can do it, then I can ask other people to come along with it. I just don't take chances willy nilly on things I don't know.
Yeah, that makes sense. This isn't all just about making money. It's your credibility, your reputation, just your feeling that you're doing the right thing.
Yes, that's right.
Talk about this is a really big undertaking, big step you took from being an agent to all of a sudden buying a property. Did you have a mentor, a teacher, or anyone that kind of helped you get started on this first deal?
That's interesting. Some of my family was in residential sales, so I had an idea about real estate, but never really practiced it that much. I had a I had a uncle that was very involved in banking. I learned a little bit about mortgage brokerage, as I talked about, so lending money. So I could, if you already know how to get 70% of the money, that's a really good step. So knowing the lender is a good thing. And right now, with all the lenders' fluctuations in interest rates, to know what you can do and not do and is very important. You need to look at that, those milestones when your loan comes due or when your fixed income period gets that way or your debt coverage falls, all these sophisticated things. But overall, I've realized that I became an island, kind of like when I was a broker. If you're all by yourself, but you got to be extremely talented. And I have some talents and some great talents, but I'm certainly not talented in every arena. I learned I was a good property manager. I knew what to do, but I really wasn't like super passionate and going meeting the tenants and da da da. So I had other people that could do it better, just to be honest with you. So I started forming a niche company by doing management for a while, and I got some really good people that helped me with the accounting or other facets. By getting more partners and getting more vendors and getting more experts, I was able to piece together a pretty good crew. You know.
So you talked about early on about the mortgage and the lender. Talk about that a little more on that first. How did you find a lender that would work with you? How would somebody go about getting that loan on their first investment property?
It's like a meet and greet when you talk to people or see people, or they come to your office if they're presenting something, or if you're not in real estate, that's fine. You can go out. There's people all over the internet. I start talking to them. They want to make loans. I've always been a broker, either a mortgage broker or a real estate broker. So I'm in sales. So I'm not afraid to approach people, but I'm also learning what they ask me. What's this? And why is that? And why are you the best? And da da da. I think you just get comfortable with people after you talk with them for a while, and they tend to educate you. And I think the easiest thing to do is when you get one bid, you ask another guy about the other bid. And not that people want to mudsling, but they'll tell you what they think about that loan or that rate. That rate's lower, but actually you're paying more in points. So it's a higher overall APR. Or that loan's good, but they won't make it to you. Well, why not? You're self-employed, and they don't like to lend to self-employed people because you got to show a certain net worth. You got to, so every lender has the box, and most lenders start sounding very familiar. And I'm actually used to using less than 3 to 5 lenders per deal because they're so boxed in for what I want to do that I'm always looking for new and better ideas, new and improved ideas. But I keep going back to the people that have helped me because they've performed for me, and very few times that when I've gone off somewhere else that they've performed better. So I end up finding the people that really work for me. That does not mean I'm not open to new relationships or I can get better relationships. If you don't ask for something, you don't get. That's for sure in life. So you've got to ask for more in order to grow and get better.
Back on that
Mhm.
first deal, did you was the lender somebody you'd worked with before, or for that particular purchase, the 10 unit? How did you find that lender?
The broker bought it to me and said, we're making loans with them. And I know they'll loan on it because of this and this. And they're usually indicators like debt coverage ratio or a certain amount of value is determined about how the numbers tumble. And I don't really need to get into it. I'd love to tell everybody how to do it. Why learn it when somebody else has it for you? You can use that tool. And then once you become used to that tool, then you can start using the hammer. But I don't want to get too detailed. But I just think that, how do I say this? I just think that you let somebody else do their job, and if they do it well, you're at the finish line. So that's what happened. The guy showed me how to do the loan, talked to him a bit, learned about it. Sometimes I've even used it for other people where I'm selling something and they need a loan, and I help them with that person. But this case, I was the first time doing it. I was very worried about it, but sometimes these deals are 30, 45, or 60 days. In the scope of your life, that's not a long time. Sure, you're on pins and needles for a little while, but that's also the exciting part.
That speaks to me that you're saying, I asked you, how did you find the lender? And you said it was a referral from the broker that was selling to you. Now, some people would say the broker's selling you. He's going to try and take advantage of you, or you shouldn't. That's not really the way this business works. It's about relationships and people helping each other out. Like you said, if you're have the courage, you're willing to ask questions, people will help you.
Yeah, people get into real estate for 2 reasons. They want to help people, believe it or not. They really want to help people, and they want to make a lot of money. And I'll be honest, as a 25-year-old getting into the business, I want to make a lot of money. But it slowed me down. I have a personality that can be really fast talking and fast moving. Real estate's a little bit slower mechanism. So is fishing. I like saltwater fishing, and that takes a long time too. No matter how much I want to catch a fish, it takes a while. And there's some blessings that have to happen to do that too. So it's like that. And it made me patient. Real estate and fishing made me very patient. My dad couldn't make me patient. He tried, but sitting there on the dock waiting for the fish to happen or trying to find a property, it took a while to pencil out. There's a lot of penciling out and a lot of analysis behind this that I'm not really talking about. We can talk about that later, because I think most people that I've talked to about wanting to buy property, they don't do the work. They have a job and then they get home and they get tired. Is it a second job? Is it your passion? You can't do it at your desk while your boss is watching you. You have to have some kind of passion. For me, I can't do anything without passion. I just can't. Try to get me to do something I don't want to do, and it's really hard to do. Hard to move me doing that.
So would you say that because you did one deal all on your own, and then you moved on to buying properties with one capital partner who happened to be your painter, did you find it preferable to do deals with the partner?
Yeah, I did. And he came along. And I put 50,000, he put 50,000. He put 25,000, I put 25,000. We did our first deal together. Actually, before I made him a client, I forgot to tell you, before I made him a client, I said, let's buy a house together, because it's easy to start with one. Even though I'm going back to what I didn't say earlier, I said, there's a property in this area where you live not too far away. Let's go look at it. It's owned by an executor of an estate, and there's no probate. Someone passed, not in the property. Somebody passed away, went to the hospital, and unfortunately passed away. And they really want to sell this house, and it's not in good shape and needs a lot of work. That's my partner, because I know what to do with it, but he's even better at it. I started with 2 sales sheets. This is what it looks like on the buy. And then this is what the comps look like, sales comps, rent comps. And then this is what the sale is going to be. And I showed him, and we honestly, God, we only made $20,000. You're like, well, wow. And even the partner said to me, wow, we did a lot of work. It took 3 to 6 months time. We took a chance. And I said, when's the last time that you were able to use your crew, make your annual income as same as you did last year, and have another $20,000 laying around? And he goes, and then the light bulb went on, and I said, we could do this again. And so again, I tried a small property first, showed him a success. See, that's what took me so long. Now I'm figuring out how it took me 10 years. I took a year to buy, sell, educate, meet. But all these early formations, 24 years later, I'm still dealing with them and good friends with them. And we'll have him on this podcast to talk about why he did it and why he's glad he did it, because he's walking around with a lot more money now than he did when he came to this country in 1986, 88, and had to clean restrooms for his first job.
Yeah, it's an amazing story. We'll probably have another episode perhaps where we bring him on, because he has a great story. And obviously you were a big part of that. So, talking about the resources you need to own your own property, we talked about the lender. You yourself were a broker. You outsourced property management, and then eventually you took that over yourself. What are some of the other things that someone would need, like a CPA, an attorney, contractors? What else do you need?
Like in any trade, there's specialists. I remember my dad was an oral surgeon, and he even referred me to his tax person. And I asked him about doing an IRA, because just someone told me that it's a good way to save and save money and all that. And he didn't even know what that was for a self-employed individual. I'm like, I'm with the wrong accountant. I mean, at a early age. And then I'm like, oh, he's a medical accountant. Okay. Is there another kind? Yeah, there is. And I actually used tax advisors, or whatever they're called, or tax preparers people. They're not really licensed CPAs. They're very good too. Some people say you have to have a CPA. That's not necessarily true. But I've used different types, and I use them every day now, because there's just too much paperwork, accounting, and expertise, and too much annual training to do and to keep up on things. I try to get, like, how do I say this? I try to learn as much as I can in each trade, but I realize that there's no way I'm going to keep up with everything. So I have to keep up with these relationships. And I always have to evaluate the relationship to make sure that no one's getting too lazy or tired, because people look at that that I do it too, right? He's getting too lazy or getting too tired or something. He's not taking care of me. That's how relationships don't work if you don't do that. I would say CPAs definitely, or accountants for sure. There's bookkeepers, which is a step below, but they're very important because they do all that in and out work each month or each day and keeping your receipts. I went through some hard times in the first 10 years of my life of not organizing all my accounting work and then just having to spend a month or so just trying to find everything and get it to the table and not tax planning. There's just so many things to learn in this business. There's surveyors, there's title people. You work with title people. What do? They ensure that you're buying the right property, but they also tell you where your property lines are. They also tell you who have rights to come on the property. There's just so many people. Appraisers. Oh my God, when I bought my first home, the appraiser said, "Hey, you're buying a great area. You're buying a great building." I go, "Why do you say that? It's very high price." He goes, "You're buying the lowest price in a very good area. So there's always going to be there's not a lot of homes in that sample. So there's always going to be pressure on the price." I learned something for the appraiser. I thought I knew more than an appraiser, but I didn't. So I learned from everybody. I just learned from everybody, Dwayne. And there's so many more people. There's different types of contractors, right? There's guys that do painting. There's guys that do flooring. There's guys doing electrical. So in every field, there is a lot of people that can touch the property. Your home inspector is very important too. I always recommend on all deals to use a home inspector. Where they're not, a practicing contractor, they can point out things like, look at that foundation or look at that plumbing. That's actually copper plumbing, but it's a different type. It's a type M versus a type L, and it's more apt to fail. There's all kinds of things you learn. It's just amazing.
So obviously you have a company, TR Wealth Management,
Mhm.
that performs real estate ownership, brokerage, property management, etc. But could someone be a real estate investor slash owner without starting a company?
I think so, but you got to understand that each apartment building, if you're doing apartment buildings, almost each income property is a business on its own and should stand on its own. So if you talk to a CPA or an attorney, they're going to want that. Sometimes they don't always agree, but a CPA is going to protect you for taxation and making sure you're doing things right, and accounting wise. And an attorney is going to make sure that you legally have an entity so you can protect against lawsuits and other things. So each property you should somewhat have a planned or an operating agreement if you have more than one person involved. If it's by yourself, you still can do a single purpose LLC. I have one. It just simply gets reported to your tax return as under your social security number. But what's actually good for that, I'll just mention this, we'll talk about it later, maybe bring an expert on, is you really want to get your income off of your Schedule E on your personals. You want to get them to, a limited partnership or a general partnership at some kind of different LLC where it's now reported on its own return. And so it's not, all your money's not out there for the IRS and everyone else to see it. It's not being covert or anything. It's just being smart. And again, you have to learn from people. You have to read it yourself. You have to do it yourself. Or in my case, I started hiring the experts. And you can't always hire all the experts all at once because you don't have enough money to do that. You have to take it on bit by bit.
Were there any major obstacles you faced as you got started owning properties? I know we talked about the money. I'm wondering if there's anything else besides coming up with that down payment.
Oh, shoot, you just stole my thunder. Capital. It's a very capital intensive business because the way I invest is I try to buy it cheaper so the property needs work. And so capital is important because again, you have your down payment, you have your closing costs, and then you have some cash flow, but it's never enough. It's just never enough. And then you have to improve the property to make it grow quite fast and quite large. So capital is very important. But other things are estimating what things cost before you buy it, estimating your loan payment, which is done for you by the loan broker, inspecting what you expect. You expect all the tenants to pay the rent, but maybe you can get a tenant ledger to show that one guy pays twice a month and sometimes lags behind. So there's so many things to look at. My mind gets quite expansive when we ask detailed questions, and I don't want to bore people. But I hope that I'm trying to put some gems out there for people that I really think that would help them.
No, certainly. We were talking just before this that there's a lot of different ways to go about being a real estate investor, or if you choose to be a syndicator or have your own company, there's a lot of ways to go about that. Some people are accountants, you're a broker, some people are contractors, and they get into this business, they perform what they do best themselves, and then they hire other experts. I think the thing I keep hearing coming up in what you're saying is having a team and having people that you can get opinions, advice, expertise from.
Yeah, very much like when I did one deal myself, I still needed contractors. And then my second deal I did with a person and they were a contractor and I was a property manager and a broker. Okay, so I'm playing two roles, but I'm also playing owner three roles. And then I'm talking to the mortgage banker. So I'm handling a lot of the financial end because that's where I had education and training. But by no means am I a CFO or a super asset manager. You do all those yourself. And then you realize, I guess, as you get older and you have perspective, you learn from more people and you learn from things. Every day I learn something that I'm not great at, and I have a choice to either try it on or not try it on or learn. I think the day you die is the day you stop learning. So I'm still learning.
Any major lessons learned in this process?
I think get started earlier. Try to take a chance earlier. Try to take an informed chance. Try to learn what you're buying by talking to people in the industry. Like I told you, a mortgage broker, another broker. Brokers tend to think that brokers are adversaries. No, they're helpers because they either have the listing and know about the property and know about the motivation of the seller, or they don't. And some know everything, some know nothing. It just depends what the owner wants to tell them. And it's up to you to inspect what you expect. I learned that from a very, very good gentleman in the apartment business. So if you think it's going to be okay, you should just take a look at it. Trust but verify, right? Those are like really simpleton things, but I don't know. It walks like a duck and it's a duck.
So maybe if the you really want the building but you're getting a bad feeling as you're walking it, maybe it's a duck, right?
Yeah, you got to pay attention to those things, and then you're always thinking about what I'm missing. Generally, I don't know. I can't say it's luck after 24 years of doing it because you just can't get lucky that often. Have I learned some things? Have I missed some things? Yeah, I've missed a $5,000 problem, but I don't miss a $500,000 problem. And the $5,000 problem, I still bitch at myself. Why did you check that? You should have known that. But you know what? I got such a good deal on the buy. I would, if I asked him for it, he would have said, "I'm no to the deal." So sometimes the deal pushes me into doing it because I've got $60,000 that I know I can make, or $100,000 I know I can make, or more on the property, and I forgo the $5,000 thing. I know about it. I'm just don't want to bother the seller. They don't want to put any money into it. I don't know if we talked about my formula. Did we talk about that yet? I don't know if that was one of the things that really helped me when I got started.
You mean as far as like how much money to reserve for other renovations and improvements? No, we did not cover that.
I think that I didn't have it to begin with. I didn't get it from a book. I got it from distilling what I did and why I was successful. I just simply, I think it's worth saying, I had a game plan and I bought a building. And when I bought it, I had to see what I thought it was worth. And I felt like I was getting a little bit of break on the price. I'm hoping I'm buying it right. And as a broker, I think I'm pretty educated in that. And that's what I would encourage your broker or you to get good at is how do you find a really good deal? Because if you buy it below the market, then if the market changes, you're still got some protection there on the downside, right? And when you're looking to maybe resell it, which I was early in my career, because I wanted to take a little bit of money, like 20,000, 40,000, 50,000, 100,000. I wanted to take that money and try to double it. That was my goal: is how can I double it or better? That's a very aggressive goal. You'll see guys on podcasts talking about this, and I'm here to show you that it can happen. Basically, I bought a property for, let's say, $500,000 and I put down, let's call it, it's not going to be the exact number, but let's just say $100,000. That's 20% down. Maybe that's a little unrealistic, but let's just say that. And then I look at the price and I put 5% of the price, 5 times 500,000, it's 25,000. I said, that's my cap on what I'm going to put in the building. Sure, some I put less and some I put more. Probably more I put more. But I said, let's try to cap my expenses at 5%. And then when I'm done with this property at 500,000, let's sell it 35% more. So taking $500,000 times 1.35, I have no idea how much that is, but it's probably 650 or whatever it is. And when I did that, and I paid my closing costs and brokerage costs, and yes, I paid myself because I had to have some money to live on. So my partners understood that, and they were making a profit, and we got out with our return. So sometimes we got off with 50,000 or 40,000 or 20,000, but on $100,000 investment, that's 20, 30, 40% if you're doing it in 1 year's time. If you got 100,000, that'd be doubling your money in 1 year's time. And I had projects that I did that for over that period of time in my first, let's say, first 20 deals I did from 2000 on. And since then, to date, I've done over 70 deals, and a lot of them I've learned to hold because they're really good properties in good areas. And you get in these situations where you want to keep it because the money's coming in so good and the tenants are so great, and you've improved lives for the tenants and they're happy and everything's going, it's being well managed. So sometimes, like I said, if it's not broke, don't fix it.
So let's recap that. We'll have to patent it. It'll be Bill's magic formula. So back then it was, let's say, 20% down, and
Yeah.
then 5% of the purchase price for improvements on the property, and then a multiple of 1.35 as what your selling price is going to be, right?
And somehow when you figure that going in and going out, you might, going in, you don't have as much cost, but going out, you have these sales costs, the title insurance, the escrow, the brokerage fees,
Sure.
maybe some taxes, some documentary transfer taxes, natural hazards disclosure, all these kind of things. But they may end up being 6, 8, 10%. So just figure 10%. So now, when you cut it down, you can see that your profit's very limited. So if you miss a roof and it needs a whole new roof and you thought it only needs 5,000, it needs 10,000, that's going to cut into your profit. So buying and flipping is hard for many reasons. You've got to know what you're doing. You got to find good people that give you good prices. They can't change their prices on you. The materials go up. Tenants don't always cooperate. Just there's a lot of things that can go wrong, and I was very successful in buying and flipping because I wanted to change the money over so I could get the money out again and do it again, because I didn't have an unlimited supply of money. If I would have kept them, I probably would have been retired by now. But guess what? I couldn't buy other buildings without any more cash. So you got to find the capital to do that. But I did keep a number of them. I'm probably keeping like 8 or 10 properties now, but they're much larger and they're much more units. So I spread the risk over 10, 12, 18, 20 or so units versus 5. The reason why I don't buy the 100-unit buildings is because people don't always want to pay high prices for those as far as renters. It's more of a community. And the smaller ones have some really unique features that I feel like I get more income from. It's quieter. I feel that they're more affordable to sell or trade. Sure, I'm trading up to better areas and bigger buildings, but in our marketplace, they're very expensive, but they're very reliable that people want to rent them and they pay the rent. That's why I don't have 100-unit buildings, 200-unit buildings, is because I did it all myself, Dwayne. Now that I'm expanding and going with more partners, I'm able to take advantage of all my expertise and then help these people make a lot of money. And typically I work with people that may have only $100,000 to invest, that are accredited or whatever, and then they can come in and buy with me because I seriously love helping people out. I really like, again, I still want to make a lot of money. I don't work for free, but I justify my fees or my percentages of profits by finding a good deal, making it right, don't spend too much money, and making it perform and reporting to them. So I just really enjoy it. I love helping people out because nobody gave me a lifeline and said, hey, you can invest $50,000, $100,000 here and double it in 1 or 2 or 3 years. My dad wasn't teaching me that. He was a doctor. He was a super doctor and a great dad, but he didn't have that. So that's why I got into reading that Rich Dad, Poor Dad stuff, because everybody I see in real estate in the last 20, 30 years, they, even the last 5 years, they're reading that book, and there's been a lot of criticism of it. I don't know why. There's a lot of truth to it, and it talked to me. It spoke to me. It spoke to me very much.
We're probably going to wrap up, actually. Do you have
Okay.
any final parting thoughts you want to pass on to the thinking of the person who's trying to get started on this journey where you were 20 years ago?
I hope I can have the time for everybody. I'd love for them to call me, ask the question, text me, email me a question. I probably can't answer for everybody, but I love helping people, sending them on the right course. And it doesn't really matter their age. I used to profile like, oh, the young person, da, da, da. And then I hired an older person and they were awesome. I don't really have an age factor. Everyone can do this. Everyone says, oh, it's very illiquid. It takes a long time. It didn't take me a long time to make a lot of money. I started with $25,000 and I have a lot more than that now. Oh, it was easy because real estate always goes up, blah, 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 blah. It doesn't always goes up. There's been different periods of time that things have slowed down or stopped. And then I said, uh-oh, what do I do? So I've learned a lot, but my word is to get started early, get educated as much as you can, try to find some mentors, a coach, whatever, or just find somebody who's successful doing it and try to follow them. Follow them on podcasts. I'm doing that. I'm learning a lot from people that are doing podcasts. I feel like I know more than they do half the time because I'm a lot more experienced, but I'm still learning good ways of communicating with clients or current clients or would-be clients. So get started early. Don't be afraid to start. You learn. It's no mistakes made, just learning lessons. And the most expensive learning lessons are the ones that you learn the most from. But just don't overdo it. Overdid it, but I was 25 and I knew more than I said I did, right? Because I was a little bit in the industry. But again, I kept repeating what's good. That's what I would do.
Bill threw out to our audience that he'd be willing to take questions, possibly even consider being a mentor. Let's give information on our website so you can learn more about TR Wealth Management and our story and reach out and contact us. We're at www.trwealthmanagement.com and we would love to hear from you. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Dwayne, very much. Thank you for your time.